Welcome to another episode of Reason for Truth. I'm your host, Stevie Garofalo. Today, we're going to go ahead and change up a little bit on this YouTube channel here, make it a little bit more personable. And what I want to talk to you about today is in a response we received from YouTube by a gentleman by the name of Mr. Moore. We're going to talk about him and his response, actually, not really talk about him, but his response to our episode we just did on, hey, Harvard's new chief chaplain, he's an atheist. And this is what Mr. Moore had to say. He said this: why are you religious conservative types freaking out over this? You realize that that's Epstein, new chief chaplain of Harvard University, speaking of, is only administrative, right? ? It does not interfere with the chaplaincy of other religious persuasion. Again, it's only a head of department. Even if that's an oxymoron, because that's what I called it in the last episode, he said, even if it's an oxymoron, the world will move on regardless of your overrated existential cognitive dissonance as to what is the sacred cow. Wow, that's a mouthful. You could see that's not very warm and kind, but hey, at the end, by the same token, he didn't call me names or anything. That was kind. I respect him. No anger towards you, man. I appreciate your comment there, actually kind of embracing it so we can address it. So thank you. Today's truth is that atheism, because he's a self-proclaimed atheist, I guess he's siding with Epstein. Today's truth is that atheism is afraid of Christianity because if they acknowledge the existence of God, it follows that they have to follow the moral values and beliefs of God, namely Christianity, and this detracts from the atheist's freedom really to live according to their selfish desires, right? Whether that's monetary, selfish gain, sexual desires, freedom. In the end, we're going to see that Moore's problem is more of a disagreement with God of the Bible, and his morality than it is with Christians. That's why I don't take it so personal. Well, greetings, everybody. I'm your host, Stephen Garofalo. Welcome to Reason for Truth, where the truth comes first and the reasons come last, but we're always and constantly learning, because when we stop learning, we stop teaching, or at least stop teaching well. Here we cut through the fog of culture's distorted truth. There's plenty of that, because in our relative world, the truth doesn't change. Truth is God, but the human will to distort it certainly does. It never rests. We cut through the distortion of current events with the truth of God as an antidote to the false messages of the sinful world. But before we get started, make sure you go ahead, man, smash that alert bell down below. You know what I always say? They'd give the old Garcia Sinistro, man, left hook and Sicilian, baby. Knock that thing out. It'll alert you of upcoming episodes coming out. Do that below now. Right down there, you know where it's at. Now, to respond to Mr. Moore, first of all, he says that it doesn't interfere, right? The fact that Epstein is an atheist doesn't interfere with the chaplaincy of other religious persuasion. He's talking about the other close to 40 chaplains that Harvard has. Again, he says his words are, he's only a head of department. That's what he says. I think he meant to say is he's only a head of department, that he used the word gig, like it's a gig, like it's a speaking gig or something, or performance gig. But listen, and then he uses the words, even if it's an oxymoron, the world will move on regardless of your overrated existential cognitive dissonance as what is a sacred cow. Listen, I want to thank Chris again for taking the time to make the post. My response to you, Mr. Moore, is that as follows: why are you using intolerant, disrespectful name calling? Show some respect for the billions of Christians on this planet. That was my response to him. Pretty succinct, right? But he sent him a follow-up comment, which deserves an episode all its own. We're going to post that again next week, all right? But for now, let's just break down Mr. Moore's comments for our thousands of listeners who tune in every month by either audio or video, okay, worldwide, and we have plenty of them. Let's get started first. Notice Mr. Moore's opening statement, which is, why are you religious conservative types speaking out over this? Now, he's actually said types are freaking out. It was a typo there. And I noticed first thing is bad English, which may be due to the fact that he was maybe in a hurry. Perhaps he has poor English, or he's from another country outside the United States. I tend to think he's in a hurry. And it's hard to criticize on that. I make the same mistake in the past myself. Try to keep that to a minimum. But either way, that's our start point. That's number one. Number two is, notice that Chris Moore had to resort to intolerant audience seclusion, is what I call it. What do I mean by that? Instead of making a rational, polite comment, or even a truthful comment, he opened up stereotyping millions, really billions of Christians around the planet in his address to you conservative religious types. pretty strong language. It's like saying you schmoes. Well, we don't. Do we get to say the same? We may say you atheists. He could have said you Christians, right? This appears to be a common argument from emotion, by the way, which is a logical fallacy. If you ever studied logical fallacy? See, he applies the scarecrow fallacy, which I believe here, and attempts to attack or discredit the person or the group or the organization. And what they do by doing that, they kind of destroy the argument, right? The argument or the point we're making. That's called scarecrow fallacy, right? And I think he's as well making an argument from emotion, which doesn't really hold any logical pieces to it or truthfulness. Just, it's emotional. People go, man, he's got to be telling the truth. Like how emotional he is. That happens as well. But in the end, Moore was unable really, I believe, to articulate a rational argument for his position on atheism. So what did he do? He resorted to an argument from emotion, as we just said. Now, Moore's questions and comments he goes ahead and asks a rhetorical question. In this case, Moore asks this question: why are you conservative types freaking out? The chief chaplain's role Epstein filled at Harvard is only administrative, right? So he's making the comment it's only administrative, that he's asking me, right? Why is he asking me if it's, hey, he's making the assertion, why are you freaking out if it's only administration or administrative, right? That he says, right. So is he asking, is it true that he's administrative, or is he asking, why are you freaking out? Doesn't make that clear. In the response, I want to notice that Moore makes his assertion in the form of a question as he adds, right, at the end of his assertion. This indicates he probably really doesn't know the role of chief chaplain, or I think better yet, he's trying to make a point out of trickery words, right? So Chaplain at Harvard, The Hill, by the way, you ever heard of The Hill? It's on thehill.com, published an article entitled Harvard's Elect Atheists as New Chief Chaplain Defying Schools Origins by Adam Barnes, August 30th, 2021, just not too long ago, a few days. Now, The Hill goes on to say that this defies the origins of Harvard. You want to know what the word really, by saying defies, is to openly resist or refuse to obey. The Merriam-Webster Dictionary defines the word defy as to confront with assured power of resistance. So, to say that, hey, this is just administrative, no, this is a hostile takeover of a once Christian institution. At the end of the day, my personal opinion is Harvard's already been gone for a long time. So listen, what's 100% of nothing is nothing, right? So I'm not freaking out, just making the point this is where American culture is going. First, let me note that the so-called billion non-religious people, it's interesting. So is he saying there's a billion atheists or a billion non-religious people? The bottom line is the true meaning of the word evil is a deprivation. And in Harvard's case, it's a deprivation of their original mission. See, it started off as this thing, and then it's been deprived of what it was originally meant to say or to do, right? What it originally did say. See, the first 150 universities and schools of higher education in the United States of America were founded by Christian clergy, pastors, priests, and Christian leaders. Now, to be fair to Moore, Harvard's website itself says this, and it's at chaplains.harvard.edu, published this: Harvard chaplains supporting Harvard students, faculty, and staff, and opens with this statement of mission. It says this: to Harvard chaplains, a professional community of more than 30 chaplains, represent many of the world's religions, spiritual and ethical traditions, and share collective commitment to serving the spiritual needs of the students, faculty, and staff of Harvard's university. I think that's fine, okay, at the end of the day, but there's a problem at the end, okay? With that being said, you got close to 40 chaplains. They all share something in common, which is a belief in some higher power, right? Called God, or in some case gods, multiples. If you're Hindu, you're going to believe in multiple gods, many billions, or millions. Epstein is an atheist, so he denies all of them, right? So why would you have a guy who denies all the other 40 and then say he's just an administrative guy? Listen, we're going to talk about that as well. He has to, think about what he has to do. He has to go to work every day, and you're telling me he's going to accommodate, if he's got authority, these religious traditions. Okay, he has to, as an atheist, he does not believe in the office and chaplain of any other the 40. He can't, right? He believes in nothing unless there's the chaplain of atheism, perhaps, that if that exists, which it may. But he has to deny all these other religions, their religious traditions, their faith, their cultural norms, their beliefs. Listen, I believe that as an atheist, that both Epstein and Moore hold intolerant positions against all the other world religions who believe in God or many gods. And I think that's an issue. I don't know why Harvard would do that, to put an atheist. But lastly, by mere definition, the title Chief of Chaplains inferred strongly that Harvard's chief chaplain has authority over the other chaplains to some degree. If the role of chief chaplain doesn't hold any authority or such authority, it would be called perhaps something like the administrator or secretary for or over the chaplains. This makes clear that Moore either does not know the role of the chaplain or is trying to be deceptive in attempting to disarm the points laid out in last week's episode on Harvard's new chief chaplaincy being atheist, okay? Even if it's an oxymoron, the world will move on, he says, regardless of your overrated existential cognitive dissonance. Man, it's a lot to say as to the sacred cow. That's obviously an attack on America and Christian values that America was founded on. And then Moore goes on to say, even if it's an oxymoron, the world will move on regardless of your overrated existential cognitive dissonance. Let me break this down first. Moore, he's rather, I think, a little bit arrogant to say that the world will move on from the Christian faith into atheism, which I think is what he's affirming. He didn't say that literally. But at the moment, atheism is growing, but that's just for the moment. Christianity is not only the truth, but it's also a viable, established, proven world religion that brings peace, justice, and love and advancement economically for many different cultures. This is what brought about the inception of Harvard itself, university, was that freedom in its original form. Atheism, on the other hand, has brought nothing but attacks upon religion. It takes away, it's evil. It's a lack of something. So instead of just being quiet about it, they want to pronounce this nothingness and say, you can't have this belief because we don't believe in anything. That's what atheism believes. Now, namely, Christianity is their focus. They notice that atheists almost never go after criticizing or after Muslims because the atheist lacks the substance, the courage, and the conviction as to what they believe. They do. It's a hollowed out. More simply put, they are afraid of Muslims because to disrespect a Muslim risks being killed or attacked, maybe having your head released from your body. The Afghanistan pullout here in 2021 is very interesting. The Taliban, listen, they eliminated all women's rights, including the fact that there is not a single woman allowed to serve in a government leadership role. Now, where's Mr. Epstein? Where's Mr. Moore with all this? This is an atrocity, right? According to this equal thing, I mean, where are they? Crickets. I don't hear any outcry. So why come for the Christian? They leave the Muslim alone, right? Well, because they're fearful of that. And that's just the bottom line. They fear the Taliban, they fear the Islamic religion, and the Muslim factions of the world. Hey, listen, good for the Muslims on that one. Atheists lacks the, I believe, intellectual, spiritual, and really the love that it takes to answer and to reach Muslims with the love of God. Muslims are people just like you and I. And there's a lot of hospitality in the Muslim world. And I do not believe in Islam. Obviously, I'm a Christian by this nature of this channel, and that's my belief. But I have Muslim friends, and they're great people. Notice how we don't see vocal atheists in countries such as Afghanistan, Iran, and Saudi Arabia. Why? Because they risk being beheaded or, denying Islam, that's against the law. The atheist has no desire to engage as well in loving and truly intellectual dialogue with the Muslim, or anybody for that matter, because they fear certainly the Muslim, and the atheist cannot bring really their deprivation or their lack, right, to these key Islamic tenets of the Muslim religion. So Moore ends his first post, which he has two posts that, of course, I responded and he responded back, but he ends the first post by calling conservative Christians' concern over Epstein as the new Harvard chaplain's overrated cognitive dissonance as to what is the sacred cow. Listen, cognitive dissonance is a state of having inconsistent thoughts, beliefs, attitudes, especially in relation to behavior. That behavior is key. That's a key word. That's going to cover, because listen, behavior is what he's talking about, and morality, we're going to talk about that in the next episode that on this subject, whether it's the next one or the one after. Now we see that Moore really is getting at here. He opens his comment by attacking conservative Christianity, and he closed by indirectly asserting rather clearly that Christian beliefs as laid out in the Bible is in direct conflict with his morality. Well, and I understand that because I believe that's true. When there was conflict, comes down to moral values. of the atheist versus, or the lack thereof, versus the Bible, the Christian. As such, Moore calls this the sacred cow, meaning the moral foundation of America was built on. In the end, Moore's problem is not with conservative Christians as much as it is really with God himself. You see, if Moore and Epstein were to accept the truth about God and Jesus Christ, they really, in all honesty, they'd have to adhere, if they were honest with themselves, to the morality that comes along with that, according to the Bible. And that's a huge threat to Moore's freedom, to live a life free from, any ultimate moral constraints according to an ultimate moral maker. What Moore fails to see is that if Christianity is removed from American culture, you have a couple choices. You do have atheism, which is communism. The other thing that might prevail is Islamic Sharia law. In closing, be praying for Mr. Moore. He was honest enough to make a comment, and while a bit emotional and aggressive in his comment, he was actually honest, and I respect that. Thank you. Thank you dearly for that. And I don't mean to be disrespectful. Hopefully I wasn't. I'm direct. And sometimes you have to be direct, but in love, right? In closing, it appears that Mr. Moore is the one with, I think, perhaps some cognitive dissonance, meaning that, he is in a state of inconsistent thought because his beliefs or attitudes, especially relating to moral behavior or attitudes, and the decision that flies in the face of an all-good God. And at the end of the day, the moral law and natural law, everybody knows God exists. They just either choose to ignore it, disbelieve it, but in their heart of hearts, their minds, deep within their mind, they know God exists. Nothing else can be explained as how the world, the universe was created, and how we as human beings act and think. This isn't again, I can't state strongly enough. Let's make sure at the end of the day, stop now. Pray for Mr. Moore. Please do that. And for Harvard University, all the students there, and for Mr. Epstein, that they would be open to the existence of God, and that they would be open to the Bible of Christianity, the true God of the universe. And that God would reach down and change their hearts and minds as he did the Apostle Paul, right, on the road to Damascus. And as Christians, we too are really, we're called to answer directly in truth, but also in love. So I pray I've done so today. Please leave your comments below. I promise to respond within a reasonable amount of time, especially if you respond somewhat respectfully. If you want in more depth online training, check out our new online training academy. It's called equippedacademy.com. And for additional resources, you could check out reasonfortruth.bible, reasonfortruth.org. We just uploaded an episode on Epstein. You could see that, the new Harvard Atheist chief chaplain. I'll put a link to that below. But also, we also just uploaded a great episode, and it is The Next Great Christian Nation, Cambodia. Because at the end of the day, while American Christianity fails, God has raised up, Iran, fastest growing church in the world right now. Over 1 million Christians in Iran. They can't meet, so they meet privately. 5 people, usually on average house church. China, as much as they're getting persecuted, the church is thriving underground. So God's not done with this world quite yet. May he return today or tomorrow? Absolutely. Jesus may return for his second coming. But perhaps he's getting ready to raise up another country if America continues on the road that it is heading on. And at the end of the day, we want to make sure authentic Christianity is growing, and we're helping with that. And that's where it's happening the fastest. So you don't want to miss that. I'll put the links to those below. If you're listening on podcasts or by way of video, don't forget to smash that subscribe button. Give the old gancio sinistro, which is the old left hook in Italian. And then smash that alert bell. You know what's going to happen. The Italians, we just like to love everybody. At the end of the day, come on out. You get you a nice deep dish, something. Maybe get yourself some eggplant parmesan. You ever had that? Oh, my gosh. It's delicious. Little cheese on top. It's good. You feel like you're eating something good because eggplant's actually purple vegetable, and it's very healthy for you. So you got to try it out. Maybe Maria will bring you a virtual one if you hit that alert bell. Thank you for joining me today. Till next time, I'll see you for the next episode of Reason for Truth. I'm your host, Stephen Garofalo, and this is your Reason for Truth for today.